Hi there, come on in. You're going to want to hang on to your seat for the next half hour. Besides having some very entertaining fishing from the Saginaw River, we're going to talk about the DNR's proposed closure of the entire Saginaw River system during the last half of March and all of April. To all fishing, a highly controversial issue. You'll meet the new staffer on our Michigan Outdoors staff, Charlie Keenan, who's heading up our SOS Bureau. He's in the middle of these controversies with the DNR and many other things. You're going to hear about him, so stay tuned. I'm Fred Trost, reporting from a domestic battlefront here on Michigan Outdoors.
All right, another walleye. Another walleye.
This is what our favorite fishing rivers look like in the winter in Michigan. Well, except for the faster moving rivers, or ones that are below spillways or power plants where the water remains open most of the year. And believe it or not, from December through March, anglers do launch their boats and fish like it's summer. Bill Rustum dons a snowmobile suit. Bob Garner puts on extra layers of wool. And walleye guide Dan Mannion even wears ski goggles to protect his eyes from the frigid wind as he cruises upstream on the Tittabawassee River to some favorite walleye holes just below the Dow plant. Now, it's no secret that fish don't eat much during the winter, but they do eat, and the relatively few anglers that brave the cold make some good catches, oftentimes with the use of a graph. Finding the holes where the walleye congregate is the secret.
Well, what I like to do is come in and graph a hole out.
Take a look, see if there's any fish.
Well, that and check out the structure and just see how the hole is laid out. I mean, I like to get at the deepest part, but in front of the deepest part, or off to the edge of it, and then quarter cast to the shallow side and bounce the jig back with the current to the deepest part in the center, and then slowly work it back towards you. Sometimes the walleyes will be laying out on the flats, though. I mean, that's just something you have to find out. You work an area a little bit. I kick in the trolling motor and move us back 10 or 12 feet, and we just keep on checking the whole hole like that. If it doesn't pan out, well, then you just move up to another hole until you finally... A lot of people make a mistake of just staying in one spot and casting in this, over and over and over and over, and if you ain't catching any fish, even if the fish are there and not active, hey, you might as well try something else. Oh yeah,
Fish on.
now he'd probably come off that shallower trough over there. I'll bet you he did. See if you can dig that net out there, Bill.
Yeah.
Looks like a nice one. And then just kind of hand it over to me like my other rods. Get a nice shot of me landing this beauty.
Walleye aren't known as big fighters, even in the summer when they're active. But to call them sluggish in the winter, well, that isn't always accurate.
All
Nice
right.
fish, Bob. Look at that baby.
All right.
You got a dandy?
Yeah. Already got one.
You know what happens? You catch one and then you throw back and catch another. I mean, they move up.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you won't catch nothing for 20, 30 minutes, and then bang, 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 bang.
It's funny how fish in the winter seem bigger for their size than they do in the summer when catching them is easier.
Couple of pounder, huh?
That's
okay.
That's a good eater right
That's
there,
eaters.
buddy.
Hey, that's what I'm interested in. I
that's
want
a-
eaters. I don't want the big spawners. I want the big eaters. The eaters. Okay, where do we put this?
Downstream, where the river is frozen, fish like this are caught through the ice using jigging lures straight down. In open water, summertime lures are more common, especially jig heads with plastic tails, with one important addition: a piece of minnow. Now, not the whole thing, just half, enough to add the element of smell and flavor to the jig.
Right here, got a fish on.
What a guy, what a guy. Mr. Walleye.
All right, another walleye.
Another walleye headed for the dinner table, which you might question. In 1989, the National Wildlife Federation published a news release alleging that many Great Lakes fish were hazardous to eat. That report, according to a group of 7 Michigan State University toxicologists, was scientifically unfounded, the research methods were inappropriate, and the conclusions were incomplete and misleading. In a nutshell, Great Lakes fish are still safe to eat and still fun to catch.
You'll feel it hit bottom. Then just lift and drop.
Just reel up slow.
Yep. And it'll work all the way behind the boat, and then work it all the way back to the boat. Don't lift with your arms, lift with your wrist. That's how slightly you want to lift it. You don't want to lift it more than 3 or 4 inches off the bottom.
Got him?
Yep.
All right.
Where are you going, pal? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, want to hand me that net?
This is what that steelhead did last December. He just took off across the hole.
Well, anglers do fish for fun because fishing is basically fun. But most fishermen concentrate on the fish they like to eat. Now, you saw Bob Garner excited about catching the small eater, as we call them. The very abundant smaller fish do make better meals for taste and texture.
Get rid of the smoke,
Yes.
Dan. Get rid
Uh-oh.
of the smoke.
He's not hooked very good at all.
Okay.
Not hooked very good at all. Go for it. Go for it.
Oh, there we go. 6-pounder, 5.5.
No, we're looking at, I'm gonna guess 4 3/4,
4 3/4.
maybe 5, being this pregnant.
Yeah.
Dan doesn't really mean pregnant in the traditional sense, but this is a good-sized female that's carrying lots of eggs. Those eggs are the walleyes of the future. Some of those eggs will hatch to be monsters. Many will attain the eater size, but most will be eaten by other fish when they're very small. So this big female is released. Those big ones are fun to catch. But if you're catching plenty of smaller ones for food, think about letting those bigger spawning size fish, the productive females especially, return to the water so they can reproduce. In the long run, that'll put more fish in the river, more to catch and eat for the future. But don't feel guilty about keeping the big ones you want to have mounted. Preserving trophy fish for many people to see and enjoy is also a positive use of our fishing resource. Winter walleye, a good way to warm up for summer on the river.
How about that Saginaw River fishing? I mean, Saginaw Bay and that whole river system has become a phenomenal fishery for walleye thanks to the efforts, the volunteer efforts of the Saginaw Bay Walleye Club, who has done a lot of work with the rearing ponds and propagating walleye. We have coming up right now in our trophy book, here's a little summary. We have 14 walleye from the Saginaw River. All of them were taken jigging, most with jigging rapalas, and most lures were dressed with a minnow. All were caught through the ice from late December to early March, and all 14 were caught before 9 a.m. or after 4 p.m. Sounds like some before and after work ice fishing, sort of a working man's Saginaw River trophy book. In order of weight, our Saginaw River walleye start with Tom Bolgers from Saginaw. His 28-inch February lunker weighed 10 pounds 1 ounce. Exactly the same as Bob Odell's. He's from Saginaw. He caught his from the Tittabawassee. Steve Turner from Saginaw caught this 29-incher, 10 pounds 4 ounces in late December from the Saginaw River. And back to jigging in February with Rick Horstman's 29-incher. That weighed 10 pounds 6 ounces. In March of '89, Terry Lee Ruprecht from Reese caught this 30-incher that weighed 10 pounds 9 ounces. Back to February, Bob Krupa from Flint landed this 29.5-inch, 10-pound 11-ounce walleye from the Saginaw. Finis Pachowiak from Saginaw took his 29-inch, 10-pound 13-ouncer in late January. Exactly the same size, but a month later, Frank Walton from Saginaw caught this big one. He was using a Clio and a minnow. Back to the standard jig and minnow is Mitch Wagner from Flint. His 30.5-inch walleye weighed 1 ounce over 11 pounds. George Gerard from Bay City hoists his 28-inch spawner that tipped the scales at 11 pounds 6 ounces. And at 11.7 comes the 30-incher taken by George Schlosser from Millington.
Now here's one caught the first week in March by Mike Markle Sr. from Munger. 30 inches, 11 pounds, 8 ounces, and hang on, they get bigger. 11 pounds, 11 ounces, 28 inches, held by Gerald Stankiewicz from Saginaw. He was jigging a daredevil. And finally, our biggest Saginaw River walleye, taken on a Swedish pimple and minnow, at the end of February was this 12-pound, 7-ouncer, 31 inches long, caught by Ed Mathewson from Saginaw. Now let's change river systems to the Detroit River. First week in April, casting a walleye diver. Look what Bob Solmos from E-Course caught, well, with a little help from his friends.
During the fight, it broke water twice, and the key thing was I was fortunate to get it in. I didn't have a net. And there was a boat ramp next to me, so I started walking backwards towards the ramp, and a gentleman behind me had yelled, "What have you got, a carp?" And I said, "No." And I kept coming in, fighting it, walking backwards. And then all of a sudden, an older man came up and asked me if I needed a net, and I said, "Yes, please." And so he came across, and another gentleman came out of his car and helped me net it. And I want to thank him for it.
Whoever they were.
Whoever they were.
Well, they were good sportsmen, that's who they were. They shared in the success of this 29-inch, 11.5-pound walleye and helped make Bob Solmos from E-Course our Michigan Outdoors Trophy Walleye Angler of the Week.
We received another recipe from Brett St. Pierre, and this one's called Whitetail Diablo, and that's an excellent way to fix a roast. You're going to take red peppers, and these are freeze-dried. I'm going to use these rather than the crushed in a jar, and their potency will stay just a little bit longer like this, and especially when you reconstitute them. And it's going to take, about an hour to get them to a softness that you can use.
That's caribou meat.
This is
remember
caribou meat.
When we tasted this recipe with Bob Garner, we couldn't remember what it was, but it was definitely superior venison.
It
I
is.
think caribou is.
It is.
Good, deep red meat without much connective tissue.
Right, and it's just a little bit grainier than venison, but very excellent. There they are. Now they're quite a bit softer here. And then everything is going to go into a food processor, including the water that you reconstituted the peppers in. You don't want to drain any of it off because you want quite a bit of marinade.
Well, Brett St. Pierre has sent me some jalapeno peppers and chili
Yes.
peppers, that he does in jars. He knows his hot stuff.
He cans them. And the marinade is just the peppers, water, garlic, oregano, salt, and just a little bit of beer. It makes excellent marinade. And the beer will kind of break down the meat and make it just a little bit more tender, too. And then going to pour the marinade over the meat and then let that set overnight, preferably in the refrigerator, because you want all these juices and peppers and everything to go through the meat.
Sounds like it's going to be extremely hot.
It sounded that way to me, but I was really surprised at how mild it came out. And then the next day, you're just going to put it in a roasting pan and let it cook. And you want to use every bit of the marinade because you don't want the meat to dry out, and it actually cooks in its juices right here.
I'll be done. Now, this is pretty simple, what we're doing, so we can concentrate on what the meat tastes like. I bet you Bob Garner, though, is going to want something to go along with it.
It just seems to me like this would be good if you had some noodles or something to put it on. It just standing alone like this, it doesn't.
It would be good.
It tastes okay. I mean, it's fine, but it just seems like it needs something.
But for our viewers who want to know why we don't have the salad and everything with it, we're trying to focus right on
The meat.
We're focused right on the meat. And I think people who don't like venison would. I don't know if this was a particularly good piece of venison or
It
if
was.
you slipped something else in here, Kat.
No,
But
it
this
was
is
venison.
mighty good.
Well,
is
it's
it caribou?
It might be.
I think it's caribou.
It's well trimmed venison of some sort, and it is very, very tasty. But it's one of those recipes just needs something else with it. In my book.
I like the way the seasoning in this is real light.
And fixed this way, it's not dried out at all. The roast didn't dry out. The moisture stayed in it. And I think it's very good.
And of course, Bob wants noodles with it. That's because he's going to run out of meat here in just a second.
No, it's reason number two. Reason number one, though, is this for some reason tastes like it's spiced so well. It just tastes like it should be eaten with something, in concert with something. I didn't say it was bad. I love it.
Hold it. You got me talked into this. How long will it take to whip up some noodles, Kath?
Not long.
I got one bite
Little
left.
salad.
I got plenty of time.
Noodles, rice, potatoes, bread. Why, it doesn't matter what you fix with this recipe. It tastes great. Whitetail Diablo. Versatile. Use it with venison or beef. Excellent recipe. All in all, there is some good fishing out there. Get outdoors if you can. It's a great place to be. See you next week.
is we have to have a situation where the conservation officers can do the job that they were intended to do, take some of the pressure off them so they can get back into fish and game management. Same thing with the biologists. Biologists can't do the job the way it was intended to do because they don't have the time to do it.
Well, we've just talked about a couple issues here that Charlie Keenan has been digging into. With our new SOS Bureau, we have some new programs to announce that we're going to be on governmental agencies for fees assessed to sportsmen to try to find out where the money goes. And that question, where does the DNR money go?
It's, we don't want to get into doing any DNR bashing, but it is difficult to find out where the money goes because the programs aren't listed. That's one of the things in Representative Alley's bill, that they would actually have to list in a budgetary process where that money is going, what the programs are.
Next week on Michigan Outdoors, we'll look at the 10-year history of this show as more than just a TV show, plus our 1-hour special Fish and Wild Game Cooking Contest. That's next week, right here on Public TV.
Well, that's so tender. You guys aren't going to believe this.